Alright, this is my persuasive speech from Tyler Beard. I'm going to wave. As of 2017, more than 24 schools have gotten upwards to $100 million generating from the athletic program. This is a quote from Jeff Cockrell. Schools have made millions over their athletic program, and where does it all go? To their coaches and administration. Players put their heart, soul, and even sacrifice academic time in their classes to go represent their school. College athletes should be paid because of the amount of time they put in and the revenue they get from their schools. I've read many articles and reports on why college athletes should be paid, and it only furthers my point. I will discuss the problems for not paying these college athletes, how to solve these problems, and the benefit it only gives to the players, but it gives to us as well. First, I'll talk about the problems. Being a college athlete is a full-time job, and the universities receive a lot of benefits from these players. Students must practice, play games, and fit an academic schedule in a tough season. As a quote from Santa Clara has written that computer science students receive compensation for their inventions in certain school programs. And a quote they say is, just as the academic mission of these colleges and universities have not been compromised by the efforts of these students, they have been compensated for their inventions. It is arguable that the institution of academic mission should be that these athletes get marketable benefits. Athletes should get just as much as these computer science students, and they do as much effort, but they should be benefit just as much as them. These universities bring in millions of dollars, and the players only receive a tiny portion of that amount. As Santa Clara writes, the NCAA gets upwards to $700 million for their college basketball tournament. And this may be different from the 20th century back in the day, but these players now that generate this much do not get paid, and if you require that these payment is scholarships, they do not get the payment that is justified by generating this much money. These universities bring in too much money to not give their players something in return for their amount of effort. And another problem is the NCAA is trying to keep these players at a amateur status to avoid paying their players. As an article in John Brill explains, the key point to why the NCAA would not pay their players is to maintain amateur status in their reputation. And a quote from the U.S. News and World Report would say, as an amateur, as a definition, is someone who engages in an activity for fun and not remuneration. So by keeping this reputation at just a fun and extracurricular level, the NCAA can avoid paying their players because all they see it as these players just coming in and just having fun on the court. So now that I've discussed the problems, I will discuss the solutions for these problems. First, there's many solutions to this problem, but the first one I see is just pay them in cash payments and scholarships as well. Education comes first, is what these colleges are telling us for why they're giving these players full ride scholarship. But does this really give them the value of their on-court play? As Brill explains, athletics cannot get the same value of a full ride educational scholarship because they have intense time and commitment for their actual sport. So if you actually give them a college education, that's just like saying a college education will benefit in the long run. But as in reality, the college bachelor degree in a workforce is slowly decreasing in value. Athletes are hardly in class to have a full ride and educational scholarship. So what's the point of even giving it to them? And another solution is just let them go professional right out of high school. The NCAA trying to keep these players in 1 to 2 years from getting them going into pros. As Brill explains, the demand for paying these athletes would not be as great of a mandate if they just let them skip college altogether. If a player wants to go straight professional, just why not let him? There has been very many draft picks coming right out of high school that deserve to go professional. Some of these players already know that they're going to be pros. So they deserve to be paid and be named as professionals. Another solution is just try to give less to coaches. I'm not saying coaches do not deserve to be paid for their same amount of success on the field, but as the Institute of Sports and Law and Ethics points out, Nick Saban gets paid $45 million over the course of 8 years, and his players only get a college scholarship and barely enough to cover living expenses. Coaches do a tremendous amount of job for their success on the field, but their players are the ones that make it happen. So they deserve to get a little bit more in return. Now that I discussed the problems, I'll discuss why it's significant for these problems and payments to have a solution for these players. These players, there's many significant things to this, but they need to have basic living expenses. Brill points out that they should be paying for rational no's because by players, we already know that it's hard for these players to have a. Okay, Brill explains that there is complement is impossible for these athletic departments to find easy money for these players. So we know there is somewhere in their budget that there is going to be some money for these players. So I've discussed. So now that I'll give you a few closing points. We have decided that there's problems for these players not getting paid, the solutions for these problems, and why it's significant for these problems. Now, we've seen these players make fantastic plays on the field and have awesome action on the court. So would you be the one to tell these players that they do not deserve to be paid?